and welcome to Trek Central Weekly. I'm your host, Commander Dom Paris, and we're here to talk about the latest episode of Star Trek Picard Season 3, which is The Bounty, Episode 6. It's a fantastic episode. If you haven't watched it, why are you here? Go and watch it, and then come back, watch it on video on demand. But with me to talk about this fantastic episode,
while you're here, please hit the like button and subscribe.
Yes, please do. It helps a lot. And also, you can super chat, and
Yes.
we'll answer your questions live on stream. But before we get to that, Starfleet Boy, as you interrupted me, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Starfleet Sohail,
Yes.
formerly known as Starfleet Boy, but I don't mind being called Starfleet Boy. You guys can call me that for a little longer, but eventually I'm gonna
we'll
look like a geriatric.
phase into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not so boyish anymore, Doctor.
I know.
Right? That's what Garrick said.
That's true. Exactly.
Yes.
Good. That's a good one.
Good one. And talking about Favre, how are you doing today?
Howdy. How are y'all?
Yeah, doing well. It's now a different time that we're doing this stream because daylight saving time has just hit the UK, so we're now in British summertime. So hopefully any of you who thought this stream was an hour early or an hour late, that's why we're here. It's because time is a weird construct and construct.
Time is the fire in which
Yes.
we burn, also.
And I would say the Picard.
More as the companion, actually, Fathery, you know?
Yeah.
You would say that, wouldn't you?
Of course you would say that. But yes, we have a fantastic episode of Picard to talk about, The Bounty.
We really do. We really do.
So, Favre, do you want to start us off? What did you think of this episode? What was your favourite part? Anything that stood out to you for better or for worse?
I mean, obviously, if you're any stripe of a ship nerd when it comes to Star Trek, even if you're just, a little casually into the ships, or if you're like, a hardcore ship nerd who has all the Eagle Moss models and blueprints and everything. But yeah, like if that's your jam, then this was like the best episode ever, right? We have that beautiful fleet museum, also a lot of cool stuff in the Daystrom station. Finally had LeVar Burton in the show, and they really gave him something special. They kind of saved him for just the second half of the season, but at least they gave him like this big introduction and gave him some big emotional scenes to play off of. So yeah, that was just a ton of fun. And finally, Worf and Raffi on the Titan, those storylines crossing over into each other and tying together, that kind of pays off something they were building up. So yeah, it was a really, really phenomenal, just fun experience watching this episode.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to ask in chat, just tell us if the voice levels are correct, and we'll edit that. Just make sure that you can hear us all and I'm not too loud or you can't hear the other people. But yeah, definitely. It was very nice seeing these very separate storylines and how they came together. Though I do have to wonder, where is the La Sirena? Is it just orbiting a sun now? Because they beam over while the Titan's orbiting a star. So I guess it's just orbiting a star now. But anyway,
if she has metaphasic shielding, she could be hiding just in the coronal
definitely
layers too.
Definitely
which
be
would
a
make
place
it even
to hide
harder
it.
to
But
be
yeah,
detected,
so Hel, what did you think of this episode? Just general thoughts.
I think I'll piggyback off of what Fathery said. It's pretty much near damn perfect. I think there's like a couple of things that like I have questions about, but yeah, it's a really fun episode. I really gravitated towards the Geordi and his family story, in terms of like the just like I loved catching up with Commodore now LaForge and seeing his other daughter and like the dynamic between him and his children. You and I talked about this briefly, but I love that they left the mom a mystery.
Yeah, definitely. Because I know there are some people who would hate if it's Leah Brahms as the mother, which I think I would too.
It's kind of cool if they did that, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But who knows? Maybe there's still a surprise as to who it is coming down the pike. Who knows? I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if I would want it to be a legacy character. Just bring in a new character. But yeah,
it's totally fine. It could be Stephanie Cortez, who's why not make it all in the family? It could be LeVar's actual wife
Oh yeah,
in real
definitely.
life, it would be cool, and then make up a new character for her. But regardless, yeah, the Geordi thing was really poignant, but the Starfleet Museum was definitely what I fixated on as a fan. Like, it just seems like the place that if I were in universe, that I would want to work as one of the junior curators, because obviously the main curator is Commodore LaForge, but I'd love to be one of his junior curators running around, like making sure all these ships are
So I would
presentable and
really
all the
hope
artifacts like
that
cataloged and
you
all
see
that stuff.
like all the like walkways and everything around the ships. I do hope there
Yeah.
is some sort of like buggy or hover sled or something which you can use to go around the ships, because otherwise that's hundreds of
Yeah,
meters
these
to
are
walk for
yeah,
this
it's true.
exhibit.
I
Yeah,
agree.
there's probably like a little tour. You probably have like a little like hologram tour guide,
Mm.
like give you like all the important information as you're like going around the ship and stuff.
Oh my gosh, there's a Hollow Janeway greets you at the a different Hollow Janeway greets you at
Could
the
be.
Or
Voyager
it's a different
Hollow Kirk
hologram, yeah, based on the ship. So you have Holo
ship. Yeah.
Sisko, you have Holo
Oh
Kirk.
wow. Ooh,
That
that's a
would be
cool
great.
idea.
Um,
Yeah, no, the Enterprise one needs to be Hollow Scotty. But you know, Scotty might still be alive in this time.
That's a good point. That's
Scotty
actually
would
true.
be
So
alive. Yes, probably. Um,
Joel says
because
hollow
this
trip
is
in the audience. I like that idea.
yes, definitely.
That's how we bring Trip back.
But talking about Trip, we did have a specific little ship that appeared at the Fleet Museum. It did somewhat get canonized in season 2 with a young Picard playing with a model of one. But in this episode, we got our look at the NX refit, the NX class having the underslung secondary hull, looking more like a Constitution class. People have asked if it somewhat retcons the final episode of Enterprise, because I think everyone's looking for an excuse to retcon that episode. But Favri, what's your thoughts on the NX refit?
I love that design. I think that it is really awesome. I think Doug Drexler is just as an artist is a cool dude. Has done some really brilliant stuff, and I know that's one of the things he's most proud of. And it is a shame that they never got to do anything with that on the TV show, but on Enterprise. But I love that we have people making shows now like Terry Matalas and Dave Blass who are just like, yeah, we'll just take this really awesome Doug Drexler design and just force it into the canon. We don't know if that's actually the Enterprise though. It could be like a different NX
I
ship, I
believe
guess.
it was either Dave Blass or Terry Matalas did say it was the
That they
NX-01.
confirmed.
So
I
we
mean,
only
I
have
assume it would be, but
that sort of confirmation. But yeah.
I'm hoping that we get a better look at it at some point in the future, because I think we'll be back at the museum at some point. Like, we
Yes.
got to find out what's in Hangar 12,
Hangar 12.
eventually. So
Yes.
maybe when they come back, we'll get a better look at it. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a problem for These Are the Voyages, because in that episode, I believe they are saying like, oh, okay, the NX-01 has to return to be decommissioned or be mothballed or something. But it's possible that just for some reason a few years after that they pull her out of mothballs,
Yes.
give her the refit for some mission or something. So it's fine. It all works into canon, and we don't have to stress out about any of that. But yeah, I want to see more of it. So hopefully we'll get more and more detailed and closer looks at the NX-01. Wouldn't it be cool if like we had to see it get into some action or something? Like,
yes, definitely.
if for some reason they have to resort to using the older ships, because we know the new ships are all networked. It's like Battlestar Galactica, which I think Dom has said he's never seen.
By the way,
I have not seen
one of our audience members did a really popular like a hugely popular tweet that he did, Benjinium, about that actually. Like, what if this has to be the old fleet versus the new fleet? Would be kind of awesome,
right?
But, so I loved seeing that tweet. But I don't know, with Terry Matalas, like, one thing I'll say with having recently watched 12 Monkeys is like, what you think is gonna happen may not happen, but he always seems to drop something that you love anyway. He's like, it's pretty cool. So with with 6 episodes in, I still have no idea how they're going to resolve it all, and I'm so excited about that. I kind of love that.
Yeah, the last 2 we know are going to be something big, and they're going to be kind of more like their own thing, and they're the ones that Terry himself directed.
wrote and
So
directed. So
that,
yeah.
I think that's what. They're definitely building up to some type of massive payoff.
Yeah,
I'm so
definitely.
excited.
But so Hill, what do you think is in Hangar 12 at the Starfleet Museum, personally?
My immediate thought was that it could be the saucer section to the Enterprise D. I don't know, it feels like that might be hanging out there, but it could be really anything. You know, what other? I mean, I think that's the only other thing that I could imagine it is, because
Yeah, I
we've
think
seen
a lot of
all
people
the
are
other
theorizing
hero.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we get that big moment where we're gonna have to use the old school
Oh my
ships because
gosh.
the changelings have all the new ships networked
Led by the
together.
saucer.
eh,
Could you
They're
imagine?
well, no, I think it's gonna be a fully restored. It's gonna be a
Well,
fully restored Enterprise D because you
Oh
just
my
need like
gosh.
another secondary hull. You
Drive
just take the
section. Yeah,
secondary
it's
hull off of
true.
some other ship and
mm.
then plug the restored D saucer into that other secondary
But
hull,
then
and then
does
bam, you get
that
like a.
make LaForge kind of like, if you've watched NCS or something, like Gibbs in his basement just working on a boat in his basement? Is that kind of what Geordi is? He's just on this starbase making his own galaxy.
It kind of fits like
Yeah, like
I would
why
imagine,
wouldn't he be doing
Yeah.
that? I mean, like
exactly.
he's Geordi. He's like the quintessential Starfleet engineer. Like, of course, yeah. He's the curator of the Fleet Museum. Of course, he's going to want to have the Enterprise D represented there. So why
But it's
not
kind of
have that as like his personal project?
Yeah, so it makes
the
sense to
Enterprise D
remake
restoration.
the secondary
but
sources so it has warp at least.
with that layer of humor though, it does strike on something quite profound, which is like when you think of where Geordi's at in his life right now. Like someone I was talking to pointed out like how, and actually Geordi says it in this episode. It's like he says like, I would have had no problem just running into. I never feared for my life like when I was younger, but now I have children and I'm constantly scared about them.
Mm.
And so it kind of makes sense. It's both appropriate that Geordi would be doing all this, but it also kind of makes sense that he chose this because, out of canon, I believe if I'm not mistaken, like he had some involvement during the Utopia Planitia disaster, so that like he probably lost a lot of colleagues and who knows what else like during that. Even if he wasn't like directly involved, with the operations there, he would have lost colleagues and friends and things like that. And that was a huge blow on. It's where you get the ships manufactured. That's the other thing I kind of imagined for Geordi is that he'd be a ship, a shipwright. I think they're called, like like designing and making ships. So it's just kind of an appropriate but also kind of sad. It has a tinge of sadness that Geordi's kind of like the museum curator, maybe ahead of his time. Maybe he shouldn't be retiring and settling down and doing this, but he's decided to do that. So it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, and talking about Geordi and just the vulnerability that LeVar portrays in LaForge, especially when talking with Sydney, his daughter, of,
Okay.
I want to keep you safe. I don't want you going out and doing these things. And Sydney being like, you taught me to do these things. I learned from you. Was just fantastic. Favre, how did you find those Geordi scenes?
I think that LeVar Burton was really able to do what Michelle Forbes did last week, where she was able to go toe to toe with this massive actor, Patrick Stewart, this huge presence that's on screen, and have those scenes that it would fall flat, if the acting's not there, it'd get kind of boring, just like these long conversation pieces. But it's kind of something that Star Trek and specifically TNG are kind of known for, always being able to do well. But yeah, it was very character centric. It was very like emotional centric. So it definitely gave us some fun dramatic sparks that they kind of weren't always able to do on TNG. Gene Roddenberry wanted everyone getting along all the time and no conflict between the main characters. But that conflict between Geordi and Picard of I want to help you, but look at this from my point of view. You're putting one of my daughters in danger. Now you're putting the other one in danger by coming here. And that turn at the end when Geordi does kind of turn around and goes from like, oh, you're trying to steal my goddamn cloaking device, to like all of a sudden like, okay, let me roll up my sleeves and show you how to install a cloaking device. But because of the emotional scenes, not just with Patrick Stewart, but then the ones that he has with his daughter Sydney, and that what you were talking about with the I learned that from you. These people are my family and stuff, and because of that moment, I'm able to buy when he turns on a dime and becomes Geordi chief engineer, helping out the captain, and had a very fun payoff.
And if I may give a bridge clap to Ashley Sharp Chestnut, who holds her own against LeVar Burton, who's quite formidable as an actor or performer. I think they like to call, performers like to call the other performer a screen partner, right? Or something like a scene partner. And they're all such great scene partners for each other. And it must be a delight for like a younger actor to be working with and having these like amazing scenes like with
it was cool seeing them all together with Mika Burton on the Ready Room, and just talking about how like it's kind of appropriate how the daughter with the closer relationship is played by the actual daughter, but they were still able to build like this rapport behind the scenes off camera and stuff.
Because I think you heard,
definitely see the chemistry.
Like they invited Ashley Sharpe Chestnut like over to their house for dinner and almost treated treated her like a daughter, like a member of the family, which was nice to see. And talking about these familial connections, Chipper said, I enjoyed the interaction between Picard and Jack in this episode, and we really do have to talk about that, because I think how this episode is all about children and what you pass on. And you always, as a parent, I mean, I'm not a parent, but I assume you want to pass on the best to your children. But that doesn't always happen. You pass on flaws as well, but that's just what humanity is. And to get that with Sydney and Geordi, and then to get that with Jack and Picard was so great, because it's kind of bookended with Jack and Picard, with at the beginning talking about the Irumadic syndrome. This is a flaw you passed on to me. I was doomed before I was even born, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
which was very harsh. But, he was drinking. He was dealing with his life. But then at the end, being like, I didn't know where I got these traits of courage, bravery, but I got them from you. Was just so good, and I'm so glad that it was resolved in this episode. And I think the acting that Ed Spaliers does alongside Patrick Stewart, like we said, holding his own with just all the little mannerisms, or the little, he goes away to think about what he's saying, comes back, and even how Jack talks to Seven about wanting a family, wanting a home. We're all stars, light years between us. We want that connection, that drive-by poetic observation, which I just love that term. But so Hill, what do you think of that? Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say you made me realize that the episode plays this like emotion beautifully with like humor also, because tied into all these emotional things are like some really funny but appropriately funny bits, like
Geordi saying, "Stay away from my toilet."
Right, exactly. Geordi has a couple, like when he's like, Jean-Luc, you stole my cloaking. It's like so good, like the way he goes. It was so good. And then when they realize it's their kids, like when he's like, Geordi, I would never do such a. And then they like pause together, and then they realize that it's their kids. It was like super, super amazing, funny stuff. But also in that Seven scene where she kind of like what does she say? She calls him out on like being like Jean-Luc with these drive-by observations or whatever.
I love their friendship. That Jack and Seven. It seems like so like I don't know, like you wouldn't expect it, but they kind of do have some similar vibes. And I was so thrilled when Jack in that scene said that the Constitution class refit was his favorite. That he's more of a Kirk man than a Picard man. I think that's really awesome.
Oof. Yeah. Oh, bless.
He didn't say he was more of a Kirk man. He said he was more of a Constitution. He said
but that's what it meant.
Yeah, that's what it meant. But talking about Kirk, we do have to talk about a weird elephant in the room, and someone mentioned about Easter eggs.
That was
the fact that Daystrom Station has Kirk's remains. Favre, what do you think of that? And like, it ties into some books and some interesting things. Where do you think that's going anywhere, or do you think it's just an Easter egg?
Well, it is possible there is a plan that, oh yeah, if Terry gets to do his Star Trek Legacy show, there's an idea of how to like bring Kirk back, and I don't know, maybe they're thinking like if we
Project
ever get to do a
Phoenix.
William Shatner cameo, here's maybe a way to do it. But it's also possible they're just like, oh, let's just tease that sometimes like high profile Starfleet corpses are stored here, and that kind of it sets
Just in
up
case.
the reveal at the very end. So I don't know, but I mean, yeah, it's the books have resurrected Kirk. There's
Yes.
some weird stuff
There's some
going on
weird
there
stuff.
involving the Borg and the Romulans.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna try to do that. Maybe they're gonna bring him back as Paul Wesley. I don't know.
I think that would be really
Yeah,
cool.
it seems weird.
So Hill, you had an interesting theory while we were watching this episode about Kirk coming back. Do you want to talk about it to the class?
Well, I have a few, but like my favorite theory is I would love it if this was kind of like a drop for this. Like they've been teasing at these like crossover events or some big thing. So maybe this could be like a tie-in to a Michelle Yeoh, William Shatner team up, or a Michelle Yeoh. I don't know if you'll do a whole movie. It'll just be like a cameo, like what Fathery said. But if it's like Chris Pine, you could do a crossover between the Kelvin timeline Kirk and Michelle Yeoh in a Section 31 show. Because Worf oddly dropped Section 31 this whole time. We've been like hearing about Starfleet intelligence, so I do feel
we do have
like
to
it was
talk
a little.
about that.
Yeah, like I don't know why they dropped Section 31 in there, because like you don't really hear about it the rest of the series. Oh, I guess like
Sneed's
Aaron
mentioned it.
Stanford's Sneed mentioned Section
Good old
31. So
Sneed.
I don't know. I don't know. I have a lot of feelings about Section 31. Like
Yeah.
I think Starfleet intelligence could be used a lot more where they use Section 31, and I like to keep Section 31 as like clandestine. I like the idea that they're like it's hard to know who they are, but it just seems like in Star Trek, everyone knows who they are at this point. So who knows?
The way that they were used in Deep Space Nine was quite different than how the modern shows are using them.
But
the initial idea, it seemed like they were something that was, totally separate from any official organization. So not something that Starfleet. That's why it was unusual that Ross was even aware of Section 31 when Bashir figured out he was working with them. It's not something that like normally a Starfleet admiral can't be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna call the Section 31 department on my phone and give them an official order to go do so. It's like no, they're like this total secret rogue group,
and
which I think makes more sense for the that makes more sense for the Star Trek universe, because that allows the Federation to maintain its ideals and virtues, like kind of the franchise is based upon.
I can see why you would want to blame some of these things on Section 31, though, just from the perspective of like it is pretty horrific what they're doing, like storing, like Captain Kirk definitely deserves to be at rest, like you know what I mean. Like,
but does he deserve to rest on Viridian 3? Does he deserve another resting point like in Iowa or something?
Picard covered him up with some rocks.
My headcanon says that like after his first assumed death in on the Enterprise B, they probably erected some kind of monument in Riverside, Iowa, to honor Captain Kirk, but there was never a body because they never retrieved a body. So it's just like a monument, just like a memorial or whatever, right? So in my headcanon, it's like when they do find like if Starfleet were to exhume the remains from Viridian 3, what they would do is then quietly bury them in the monument at Riverside, Ohio, so that like his remains would be at his monument. So that's kind of how I always imagined it in my head canon that it could be. But clearly now we know that like there's no body buried in Riverside. It's being and then the other dubious thing is if I saw a transcript of it and it says that like he had received critical injuries, which to me suggests that he wasn't dead when Jean-Luc buried him. That like Starfleet
it's like you're dead, it's fine. It's like no, I'm still alive, Jean-Luc.
That's so morbid.
It is really morbid.
Picard buried Captain Kirk alive.
So I like that Starfleet didn't do this. It is Section 31 that's keeping these options open, and it's not something that like a decent,
And it's definitely something
organization
a
would do.
story could pick up, whether it's a show or a book or a comic series that can just be like, oh, okay, Section 31 has resurrected Kirk. What does that mean? What story is he involved in? You know, they can
Right.
do some interesting stuff with it. But
Heck, he could
there's
even
a lot
team
of
up with
interesting
Michael
things.
Burnham in the 32nd century, depending how long they keep him on ice there, and like
Yeah,
how long that
definitely.
facility survives. If Daystrom
Oh
Station
yeah, I
survives.
was best friends with your brother. Yeah.
That's
Uh,
true. It'll all come full circle. It's
that's
really
interesting.
bizarre.
But yeah, talking about resurrections and like a phoenix from the ashes, we do have to talk about Data.
Yes.
So going into this series, I was really hesitant. You know, we saw clips of Lore back, but I was like, are they just gonna keep Lore? Are they gonna bring back Data? Because Data's death in season 1, I think, is one of the strongest parts of that season. It is very well done, and it gives him a good death. And I was worried that if they brought him back, it would tarnish that, make it a little worse. But from at least my perspective, I think this is really good. And from, we get a monologue from Sung from season 1 being like, okay, I wanted to preserve myself, but that's not how humanity is. It's addition. It's you add the pros and the cons and you get something new. So I like that we have this android M510, and it is a mixture of basically all the characters that Brent Spiner has played. Lore, B4, Data, Sung, all of them in one. There's also, I think they said there's some Lal in there, so it'll be interesting if Brent Spiner plays as Lal, because that's a character he hasn't played as. But I do have to give credit to also Brent Spiner and just his performance.
Kiss Jonathan Frakes?
I would love that.
What's that?
If he plays as Lal,
he's gonna kiss Jonathan Frakes.
That's really
if
funny.
he's Lal.
Yeah. But just how on a dime he can just change, and you can be like, oh, that's definitely Lore. Oh, that's B4.
The Lore was the best one.
It's so good, so I have to give him credit for that. Yeah, Favri, what did you think of this new being, this new Sung Golem?
As much as I love this episode, I did have, I guess, 2 complaints. One of them is a pretty big one with the Section 31 stuff.
Yes.
I just described why I have issues with that. And I think that's clearly like a franchise-wide decision on what to do with the show. So I don't blame the Picard team too much for that. I think that's just what they want to do with Section 31 and have it be incorporated as a larger part of the franchise going forward right now. My other problem, though, was did we really need another Brent Spiner character? I know they wanted to have all of the big 7 TNG actors in this season, but I mean, Alton Soong already existed in the 25th century. Couldn't they have just used him? I don't need Data to have yet another death, a third death.
Yeah,
and I think
don't,
that was
I don't
an
want
important
him to end in this season.
And it's an important part of his arc that that was part of his journey to become human. As part of that is the finality of the human experience. It does come to an end. And so I don't want to have him resurrected. I don't want to have him die again. I don't want there to be more Data. So I'm hoping whatever is going on here with Lore and Data and the Soong memories and all of that combined, I hope that it actually is what Alton said. I hope that this is not preservation, that this is in fact addition, and what we end up with when all of the marbles have realigned and gotten back in place in his head and he has his personality straightened out. I hope that it is a new character, perhaps the final Soong, the final android, the last Brent Spiner character.
I mean, I assume
the ultimate one it was all building to.
Like AI Soong, alternate Inigo Soong, which someone in chat, I think Seal, said he was so obviously Lore. I disagree with that. He was not so obviously Lore, at least in my opinion. But the fact that I don't think he had any kids, because he was just stuck on the synth world, building synths. So this would be the last Sung. Obviously, they can bring in, oh yeah, he had a secret child. There's another Sung. And now played by Brent Spiner in his 90s.
Or you could just be Alton's twin brother.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, he had twin brothers. That's why that's where the idea of lore and data came from. Obviously, yeah. Um, they could do that. No, please don't. Um, but I would like that this is the final song, and we can, you know, go on from this. And if we do have more synthetic characters, some more android characters played by other people. But that's also something I saw online, which was it would be really nice if we do get Daj meeting, Soji meeting with Jack or Sydney or Alandra and just having these children of these legacy characters interacting, because that would be nice.
Yeah, and have Alexander show up too.
Yes, Alexander.
I don't think it's gonna happen. I don't think we're gonna get out. We might get a mention though.
So interestingly, there is somewhat of a tie-in of the recent Star Trek comics with Picard, and Alexander is mentioned in the mainline Star Trek series. So the fact that he's included there might mean that he's not included here. But yeah, I do wonder where Alexander is right now.
The M510 Android for me sparks a lot of kind of cool imagination and things, and I'm really hoping that I too, sorry, I'm losing my voice a little here, but I too really appreciated Data's death in season 1 of Picard, because I always felt like the death in Nemesis while Noble was a little too quick. Like it was just like it was like kind of over, which kudos, because like it's kind of how death happens. Like it doesn't always happen in like a glorious moment. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. Like it's over 1 minute the person's there and the next minute they're gone. And so excuse me, so having him have that moment with Jean-Luc was really meaningful to me, because Data is one of my favorite characters. So I was also worried about it, but I will say that I am going to ride along with it, because I think it is interesting what they're doing. In my sorry guys, I keep losing. Oh, there it's back.
There we go.
Is back. All right. To me, on a non-in-universe version, like I'm willing to suspend my disbelief, because I do enjoy having Brent Spiner be a part of this like farewell to the TNG cast, as like this like last hurrah where they're all together. So of all the ways you could have contrived a return, like to me this actually not so bad.
Probably it the best way they could do it.
Yeah.
It definitely feels appropriate for him to be there.
Yeah.
One thing which we saw, not in the episode, but online after the episode came out, was that in one of these projects was the Android duplicator thing from the original series. And Case Eternal says, we could have a fistful of datas, which is great. But there's a lot of
which is sad, because that's what Guinan, remember, like he was talking with Guinan, and like that's the thing he wanted the least. Like he never wanted anything like that, like an army of datas. But in Picard season 1, essentially that's what those F8 units resembled Data. Like they kind of look like a data unit, so yeah, it was kind of scary where the Federation was going with that technology to begin with.
But yeah, we talked a little bit about some of the projects at Daystrom Station. Favri, what was your, I guess, favorite project? That was the favorite little item that was on Daystrom.
Oh, well, I guess the Genesis 2 was an interesting one. But yeah, the attack tribble, I guess, because it reminded me of they make a toy mirror universe tribble, which is basically just like a tribble with teeth.
Oh, okay.
This is kind of like a canonical version of that, but I think it was meant to have been a genetically altered.
Yes, it said at the bottom.
But we got like that character moment between Worf and Riker, and Riker kind of busting Worf's ball, which he would always do. Worf was always such like a badass on DS9, and then there'd be like a TNG movie, and you'd go over to those TNG people, and they would be like cracking jokes and making fun of them and stuff, and he was like Riker being like tough little ship in First Contact and stuff like that all over again.
Yeah, definitely. One thing which we saw online was that the Arce archive was apparently on the station, and I do want to wonder where on the station, because at least from the episode, it looked pretty big. And one thing I would
a big
really
station.
love is, there's a moon orbiting Daystrom Station. I would love if it's inside the moon.
I think the station's orbiting the moon.
Well,
That's probably
no.
how it is. Like,
Well, the station, the moon is orbiting the planet, which the station is also orbiting.
Right.
But I would love if the archive was in there, because I was looking up on Memory Alpha, and some background information to the archive was it was meant to be an advanced Genesis device originally, conceptually. So it would be nice if that moon is just a temple inside. It's like a temple Genesis cave. I think
cool
would
idea.
be really cool. But I just have to question how secure Daystrom Station is if a ship can warp in and hide behind the moon for a little bit.
well, they explain that. There's a quick line of dialogue that says, normally there's transporter inhibitors and they wouldn't be able to do that, but they saw something in Rose Intel that, like, oh, now we know how to beam on.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's probably they're just duplicating what the changelings did. Okay.
Very convenient of Ro to have figured that out ahead of time, but glad she
Yes.
did.
Yes, that
Good
makes
old
sense.
Ro.
I didn't pick up on that.
I'm still sitting with that sacrifice, by the way. That's still sitting near to my heart.
Yeah,
like that was pretty
Apparently,
intense.
we're meant to get some more TNG cameos later in the series. So if they can live up to Michelle Forbes' Ro, will be interesting, because we were teased in teasers a while ago that Moriarty was going to return, and I did not really like his inclusion here. So Hill, what did you think of Moriarty in this episode?
I've been very excited. I was lucky enough to get a cameo from Daniel Davis like a year before before he was even signed on to this production. Like, he just does this like really epic.
Okay, I have
cameos
to
where
hold you for a second, because we just got a super chat from
nice,
Sean
we got a super chat.
Kesey for
Thank you,
£2.
thank you.
So thank you very much. Who said, sorry, just joined. No worries. What's in Hangar 12? The D, the E, or both? We think it's the D. We think Geordie's just been working on it in his spare time. Just making a secondary hull for it.
They're gonna roll out the D.
Sense.
Riker's gonna be like, the fat one, my ass, and then it'll be like this big ceremony. It'll do the Jerry Goldsmith da 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 da.
Yeah, definitely. And remember, if you want to support the channel, if you want your message to be read out on chat, you can super chat. Feel free. And we appreciate you very much. So thank you, Sean Kesey. But sorry, Sir Hill, carry on.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that Daniel Davis like does this brilliant. He can go into character as Moriarty like very easily. And he did a brilliant cameo in character as Moriarty, like wishing my channel well, and then suggesting that like Picard should bring Moriarty back. And this was like a few years ago, so I was really chuffed when I saw that he was showing up in Picard season 3, because I was like, oh, Daniel Davis is like this is like what he's lobbying for. Like he finally
Did Terry Matalas watch that cameo video?
I have a feeling Daniel Davis has been pitching his return to a lot of people, but yeah, I would just say that, like, but I would say that that's like
when he went to STLV, he was like running around telling people like, what if they did this and one of these new stars? It was like, it didn't even make sense, because it was like when Discovery was about to come out. But what if they came across this little box with Moriarty? And
so yeah, he's been trying. So like to have this like this moment, it felt appropriate for a lot of reasons, because the part of the M510 android that is Data recognized the crew, but like the other part of him still was like doing the security, so like it manifested.
So he was dreaming,
like it manifested in this way, in this funky way, and it fits with what like the Vulcan gangster, I forget his name, but
Kryn.
Yeah, thank you, Kryn, played brilliant by Kirk Acevedo. But it mirrors what he said about like the AI being kind of like unstable or like I just loved that idea. So it was done in a way that, like, again, as I said earlier, like where you might have all these expectations about how these things are going to happen, but they're still delightful the way they work in, and they all still feel, I feel they still feel like sensible or related to these characters. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed the Moriarty thing, and I like the idea that if we get that Moriarty's still out there for possible future
Yes.
stories, to be told. So the real Moriarty.
Yeah,
that is.
definitely. And I just have to thank.
Well, not the real Moriarty,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
I have to
the
thank
real hologram
Sean.
Moriarty.
I have to thank Sean Craig Parkinson for saying hit like. So if you are liking the stream, do make sure to hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. We did put out a recent video on the Enterprise E, if you're all interested in that. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be the ship in Hangar 12. But yeah, it's a good video done by some amazing people on our team here at Trek Central. But, continuing on about Moriarty, I am at least glad that it isn't the original Moriarty. It's just a figment of Data's dream. It's a Moriarty he's just come up with now. Because I think a lot of people before this episode were theorizing, the AI that's protecting Daystrom, it's going to be Moriarty. And I would have really disliked that, because then it really paints
under prison.
It
exactly.
paints Starfleet really bad to have this entity that wanted to be free, that wants to be free, and now is a glorified security guard. That is somewhat what they've done with Android M510. Is this fantastic piece of engineering? Let's just make it into a security guard for all of Section 31's projects, which does paint Starfleet in a bad way.
Which is why Section 31 shouldn't be an official part of Starfleet.
Exactly.
They should be allowed. They should be allowed to do the bad guy stuff. That's what makes them interesting. What if there was a bad guy who is on your side? Okay, that's an interesting story. But allow them to be the bad guys. Separate them from Starfleet.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, and also I do have to say it was really interesting looking on Twitter after this episode came out, and seeing that they did get a live Raven. I think Sohail, you did say that they couldn't use a lot of that footage.
They ended up using creating a mostly CGI Raven, but it's cool that they tried with a live Raven.
Yes, there are some interesting footages of trying to guide a Raven through this set, which is interesting. We have another super chat from Mr. Stay Fred. I hope that it's not Stefried or something. For $2, do you think that Deanna is possibly a changeling? So yes, at the end of this episode, Riker gets captured by Vadik. I also want to say that the alien that Vadik impersonates on Daystrom is an alien we saw in season 1 of Picard, which was names like Fasoj or something, which I just think is cool. But Riker gets captured by Vadik, and we find out that, at the beginning of this episode, Vadik was talking about find all Picard's associates and we'll hunt them down. Or was that last episode or this episode?
No, it was this. It was at the beginning of this.
It was the beginning of this episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
And it turned out that it was Troy. There's the chat going. But Favre, what did you do you think that Deanna is possibly a changeling? That's been something that's discussed, or do you think it's the actual Troy?
When I first watched the episode, I did think that is obviously possibly a changeling. And then I normally don't watch the clips they show in the ready room for the next week's episode, but this week for some reason I actually did watch the clip, and just it does. Troy's not in the clip, but Vadik is, and just some of the things Vadik is saying about Picard's colleagues that we've captured, it made me think okay, it sounds like that's actually Troy. So when I saw that, it made me think okay, that's probably the real Troy and the real Riker.
Yeah, definitely. And
the real Will Riker.
Yeah.
No, it's Thomas Riker. Oh my god, he's back.
I'm just super worried about Kestra. I hope she's with Captain Crandall.
I was trying to say Captain Crandall. Yeah. I want her to be with Captain. But we do know that she
Captain
can take
Crandall's
hold of herself.
Gonna be the hero of season 3. He's gonna kick Vadik in the head and then save Will Riker and Troy.
How dare you do this to Kestra's parents?
You know what ship he has? He has the Bonaventure. The Bonaventure will finally be.
I think we do know the name of his ship. It's like the Morning Light or something.
They did
something with light. For those who might not know Crandall, because Yeah,
is
he was
who
only mentioned in one
Kestra
line.
texts with. Yeah,
Kestra has a friend on Nepenthe called Captain. Is it Robert Crandall?
Robert
Or
Crandall.
Rupert
Right.
Crandall, something like that.
I think it was Robert. Yeah.
Yeah, who's just this old guy with a ship on Nepenthe who's best friends with this like 16-year-old girl or something.
It's gonna turn out that he's gonna turn out to be played by Ian McKellen, and then he's gonna come in and like save everyone, and then it'll be like, I am now the star of the show, Patrick Stewart, not you.
Oh my god,
And
Star Trek
instead
Crandall
of-
coming to Paramount Plus.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
And instead of like the final episode, instead of it ending like Star Trek 6 with like the signatures of all of the actors, all the entire TNG crew, like Star Trek 6 was with the original series, instead of that, it'll just be one signature. It'll just be like Ian McKellen, and that's it. Then that's the end.
Sir Ian. He'll put Sir Ian McKellen.
But
in there.
yeah, I mean, we do know that
That's
Kestra...
way better than what I thought.
Yeah.
I was
Go
gonna want him to be George Clooney, but I like Ian McKellen way better.
Well, I was thinking you were going to go with like Jeffrey Combs or something.
Jeffrey Combs might be good too, actually.
You know, we do know that Kestra can at least look after herself. You know, she hunts in the forest and kills bunnycorns.
Well, they've had attack from
yeah.
Kazinti, so like they've learned to fend for themselves. So I do believe,
Yes.
like, I have to believe she's safe. Otherwise, I think the first words out of Deanna's mouth would have been not "Oh Will," but you know, Kestra or something like, you know, just to emphasize.
Oh, well, you know, crying after seeing Riker and being like,
yeah,
that's way cool.
exactly.
So one thing I thought, at least from episode 4, was that because we've seen some footage of Riker and Troy being captured in some trailers. I think like the mid-season trailer or the after the first act trailer when episode 4 came out. And I thought, oh, okay, Vadic is going to track the communication between Riker and Troy in episode 4 and find out where Troy is and then go and find her. But it does make sense considering she knows a lot about Starfleet personnel. You know, she knows about Shaw's psychological profile and all the stuff that she can easily be like, okay, Troy's on Nepenthe. I'm going to send some of my changeling henchmen off in a, I don't know, what ship do we have in store? Oh, an Alachi ship. Okay, go off. Get Troy, come back here, and it's all good. Yeah, so I definitely do think it is the actual Troy. Some people were wondering, oh, is it a spirit hologram because of their telepathy between Troy and Riker, which was really only brought up in the first episode of TNG.
They didn't do that a few times. I thought they did.
Did they do it another time? I can't.
Well, I don't remember actually. I can't remember. Yeah.
But I definitely do think it is the actual Troy, and not a changeling. You know, I think we have somewhat had enough with all the theories of, oh, is this person a changeling? Is this person a changeling? Is this But you kind of do go into that thought when changelings are brought in, because you do have to question everyone. You know, Riker's acting differently. He might be a changeling. But, you know, we'll see. Is there any other aspect of this episode you would like to discuss? Considering we're hitting the hour mark. So I will also turn this over to chat. If you do want us to discuss anything, let us know, and we'll keep a lookout of that. I see Seal talking about, you know, it's much easier to kidnap Troy than it is Laris, which does make sense, because also Laris is setting up the security detail of a diplomatic function.
Laris is just, she is sitting at the table at that bar, just like, where the hell is this asshole? Just looking really pissed off.
I want to just mention, I know that there's so many moments, but I just want to mention, and it's been mentioned so many times, but I just want to add to the mentioning of how great Todd Stashwick was in that moment when he meets Geordi.
Yes, the fanboy scene.
He kind of loses, like, he this whole time he's this hard ass, like, he's saying no to Captain Riker and to Admiral Picard, but then he sees Geordi and he's like, sir, he's like, so like, it's like, you know,
could I have your signature
nerd from TNG is that's who Shaw looks up to as like a big badass, right?
Right, it's so awesome.
It makes total sense for his character and as a former engineer.
I really want Shaw to now try and do a roll underneath like a ceiling door, just to emulate Geordie and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it," and then he
Yes.
fails or somewhat because he's like
No,
fanboying
no, he
over.
does it
I get this
perfect.
opportunity. I've been practicing this in my room. Or on the holodeck. Ah, all those years rolling under falling doors. It's finally coming to service.
And then just one more time, I want to say that despite my love for all of Star Trek, I have to say that I also was very chuffed to see the Enterprise A. She's my favorite, specifically Jim Kirk's Enterprises, as Jack points out, because he was the only captain of that, the only master of that vessel, because the 1701 had Robert A.
Unless it had a different name before becoming the Enterprise.
I,
Like, a lot of
I
people
thought
think it
that
was the Yorktown.
it had the Yorktown, but had it not seen action yet, right? Wasn't it gonna be commissioned as a Yorktown?
They mentioned the Yorktown in Star Trek 4, like near the beginning,
previous, but this could have been the New Yorktown.
Okay, maybe.
Could have been the
Who
previous
knows?
Yorktown. I don't know.
But it is for sure Kirk's Enterprise. Like, Kirk
Yes.
commanded her to her last day.
More
in Star
so
Trek
than
6.
the previous Enterprise, which, Pike and then Kirk and then
Yeah,
you can kind of say
April.
Decker.
I kind of want
April.
a short.
Yeah.
I kind of want a short track of old man Robert April, like witnessing, like on the Federation News Network, seeing
yes.
like the Enterprise, the 1701 going
And
into
talking
the
about that, we do have somewhat some news, and I think it was recently Kurtzman said that they were going to more focus on character-focused things, and whether that could be short treks, which, have been quite absent, and I'm sad about that because the short treks were great.
I really
We
dug
got some
the short tracks,
Calypso.
yeah.
Oh, one thing
Were
I do
they
want to say,
great? I
I
liked
liked
didn't think
them.
Short Treks ever. I didn't think that ever lived up to its potential.
It didn't live up
I
to
agree
its
with
potential,
that,
yes, but some of them were
what we
great.
got was pretty delightful, yeah. So
Yeah.
If Short Treks was a TV show, it would be my least favorite Star Trek TV show.
I would say so because there's some really strong ones in there, like Calypso. Calypso is what I introduce a lot of my friends to Star Trek with because it's like,
Oh, right on.
15 minutes. You can spare that, right? And that was before Lower Decks came out. And even then with Lower Decks, I'm like, you kind of need knowledge of the entire series. But something I do want to say is I would have really, really, really loved if the genetic tribble on Daystrom was a reference to Trouble with Edward. Because even though I very much dislike that short trek, it would just be great if they just look at it and it starts multiplying. I would have loved that. And then there's some sort of security device to stop it from multiplying. I don't know. Who knows?
That's pretty funny.
But,
Dom, you bring up something interesting though with Alex Kurtzman's comments the other day. I think because we are getting so close to First Contact Day, we're probably not going to have anything big announced between now and then. They're just going to save it because that's like a week and a half away, right? It's right around the corner.
A week away.
So I'm thinking we'll get the Strange New World Season 2 trailer and a release date, probably sometime in May. And I think there might be some news with that the Nick Meyer Con podcast thing that they're doing. Because they haven't talked about that in a while since Star Trek Day, so maybe something with that. And then I don't know if they're gonna have it, if they're gonna pull it off. But I promise you right now, everyone at Paramount Plus is scrambling, trying to get can we sign Michelle Yeoh onto a mini series or a made-for-streaming movie? Yeah, can we announce that on First Contact Day?
Because
she's very very much the center of attention right now with her Oscar win.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they definitely do need to sign her on and make sure she is part of it, because we know they've had these issues with Star Trek 4 and being like, we're doing Star Trek 4, none of the cast have signed on to it though. It'll be out.
But that's Paramount Pictures, not Paramount Plus, so technically different individuals for the same company.
What do you expect from Star Trek Day? Any new shows? Do you think there's going to be a 25th Century spin-off announced?
What do you think?
Most
excited to continue spending time in this era. I really like the idea of this proposed Star Trek Legacy show. I like the idea of the last generation and the next generation, this kind of I feel it's very relevant to like where I'm at my age. Like I feel, like in terms of like, I'm kind of like where Seven and Rafi are, like in terms of my age, surrounded by these like older legends and the next generation to come. So it's kind of I like the vibe of like what they're presenting, and I think it's a show that could appeal to a lot of different age groups and different types of folks just because of that like dynamic,
Mm.
and obviously a series set in this time, hopefully greenlit with lots of potentially lots of seasons, would have more space to tell these stories, do less of the I like
Yes.
fan fan
Like
service
nostalgia.
personally, but
Yeah.
to just spread it out and do it like in a more natural way, even though I have no complaints about the way it's being done in Picard. I'm just saying in general, like when you have a compressed time, you're trying to tell everything in that story. So I would love to spend more time in the 25th century. That being said, I am kind of like hoping that we do get another show that does stuff like Discovery does now that Discovery's leaving, because it was actually filling in a nice little Star Trek desire, which I have, is for the totally bonkers new, like out
Yes.
there science fiction stuff. And like as much as like I live and breathe the 25th century, now that we've had glimpses of the 32nd century and like beyond, like I do think that that's exciting, and there should be some kind of way to like continue telling stories further than the 25th century. So I don't think that answers your question very well, but, that's how I feel about it.
We do have Lilith Coot in chat saying, I can't help but wonder which Soong had been put in Data. Is it Alton? Yes, it is Alton. I think it's pretty much.
I think it's Alton. Yeah.
Said that. Oh yeah, I put a bit of my, when he's doing the monologue. He says I put a bit of me in it as well. So yes. But in terms of what they might announce, Favre, you do bring up the Khan, the SETI Alpha 5 podcast, audio drama, whatever form that takes now.
Perhaps additional seasons of Lower Decks, I think, is very likely. I don't know if they're going to greenlight more Prodigy right now, but I think Lower Decks is very likely to get an announced. Four is coming up. Fifth season. Yeah. Because right now they haven't announced that they've ordered anything past season 4.
No. So we'll see where that goes. I think
I want Prodigy to have a lot more seasons, and Lower Decks too, because I love those shows.
Well, our friend Aaron Walke, writer producer on Star Trek Prodigy, did say that the views of that show will make a big impact on the decision if there will be more or not. So if people dig Prodigy, then you keep rewatching Prodigy. Recommend it to people. Try to get the views up to show Paramount Plus. We would like more.
Yeah, definitely, and that is the same with Star Trek Picard Season 3, and possibly a spin-off show with 25th Century. If you do want that 25th Century show, make sure to subscribe to Paramount Plus if you're not, because if you're watching it through illicit means, and just watch it, because it's not just
don't
first
freak
watching.
out if they don't.
Yeah.
If they don't announce the 25th Century show on First Contact Day, don't freak out, because I don't think there's any way that they're going to. That's too soon. It took after Discovery Season 2 ended, it was an entire year before they officially announced Strange New Worlds was going to be a thing. So be
definitely
patient. These a new live action show is a big deal. It's something. It takes a while before they can
and a big investment
things like that.
Yeah, but I think in terms of investments, I think. For the 32nd century, if that Discovery turns into Starfleet Academy show, which they've been talking about, that would be a reasonably easy investment to do, because you can use a lot of assets that Discovery has built up. So it'll cost less to, we love these shows, but at the end of the day, it is show business. There is a business side to it that we have to look, because we're not in Star Trek right now. We're not in a moneyless utopia. We're in a money-filled dystopia, question mark, but who knows?
Everything is controlled by greedy corporations that just need to make money for their shareholders, and that's all they care about. But if that is all that they care about, if we show them, oh yeah, look, we're gonna spend money on this thing, then we can get them to give us stuff we want sometimes. An Academy show, by the way, that's something they might possibly announce. That's something that's been in the works for a while.
Yeah,
I don't.
it's a good
It's
point.
not the show that I would have the biggest appetite for right now. It's not the one
Mm.
I would choose. I would rather see, the 25th century, or I do want the Michelle Yeoh thing
Yes,
just to
just because Michelle
fix
Yeoh.
Section 31. But
Yeah.
uh, the Academy show, like if they did announce they're gonna greenlight an Academy show, I wouldn't be shocked at all, because that's been in the works for a while.
Yeah, definitely. So, we'll have to wait. First Contact Day in a week. We'll be covering it here at Trek Central. We may be doing a stream on it to cover it, like we've done in previous years. If not, you can always follow us at our Twitter pages, which is at the Trek Central, and on our website at trekcentral.net. Just keep up with that news and any other Star Trek news that comes about. Also, we do have to just bring up that today would have been the 92nd birthday of Leonard Nimoy. He was born 1931, 26th of March. I think that's right. So, it's unfortunate that he has gone, but his legacy remains, and, we have
And
his
I would
character
say
of
it's
Spock
stronger than
continuing
ever.
because
He's
of him.
still beloved.
Yes,
Yeah,
he is
it's true.
still probably the most memorable aspect of Trek. Even if you say, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Picard," everyone knows Spock. Everyone can picture Spock and see, "Oh yeah, that's Star Trek." Even if they don't know Spock's name, that's Star Trek.
He's been the most iconic character of Star Trek literally from day one.
Yes, definitely.
That's fair.
Yeah. So we all miss him, but he left behind a fantastic legacy and a fantastic character and all his other acting credentials. So we are blessed to have gotten Leonard Nimoy Spock, because just imagine if someone else played Spock. That would have been weird, thinking about it now.
And as a director, he was the
Yes.
first Star Trek
Been-
actor to direct, and that set a path for many to follow, including Jonathan Frakes.
Yes, who is
Yep,
fantastic. He's one of my favorite of these new cast directors that we have with our new slate of Trek. So yeah,
There's a what if
so much
where
legacy.
Forrest Kelly plays Spock. By the way,
But then, is there also a what if that Leonard Nimoy plays McCoy?
Oh wow! Yeah,
Because
maybe.
that's something. But yes, we're we've done an hour-long stream. We may have missed some stuff, but we thank you all for being here. As ever, you are a lovely chat. You moderate yourselves. It's great for me being able to talk about this stuff and not having to worry about you. We try and interrupt the chat a lot, but with these episodes, they are very dense. There is a lot to talk about, so we apologize for not getting to all your comments, but we thank you all for being here. So Hill, any last words / where can people find you?
This was a lot of fun. It was lovely to hang out with you guys and talk about Star Trek Picard, my favorite show. And you can find me at Starfleet Sohail on just about everything. Starfleet Boy on Twitter. I haven't changed that. I won't be able to. It's kind of a complicated tech issue. But anyways, you can find me on that. So yeah, check out our YouTube at Starfleet Sohail.
Yeah, very nice. Also, Rob Chapman came in the chat, so I just want to say hey. Sorry for coming late. No worries. We'll catch you another time, but thank you for being here, and everyone else. I also just realized that we still had the poll up, so I ended that. So the favorite aspects of this episode was the Starfleet Museum with a resounding 56%. Which,
Of course.
yeah, of course, that makes sense. We had Jody and Data, 24%. It was great that Data's first words were just Geordie. Honoring that friendship which we've seen for 7 years. Daystrom with the attack tribbles and everything else. Yep, with 9%. And then, unfortunately, at the same, Jack and Sydney, Crasher or LeCrush.
The Tide.
Yeah, with 9% as well, so they're tied. So, people are shipping Jack and Sydney. I did see in chat someone being like, Jack and Seven are going to be a couple. Please no.
I mean, she's old enough to be his mom, but
yeah, that. But also, I we haven't talked about the Raffi and Seven stuff. We may talk about it next week. But Jack and Sydney's just cool. They're both troublemakers and crash things. So, Yeah,
Yeah, I like it.
definitely. Favre,
It crushed
anything else
me.
to add
Okay.
/ where can people find you?
Sure, sure. Well, people can follow me on Twitter at TXTrek or listen to the Text Trek podcast wherever you get your podcast. We do a live show on YouTube every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central where we have a deep dive discussion about that week's new episode of Star Trek. When
Yes.
there's no new Star Trek, we talk about old Star Trek. We just did a really fun series on DS9 where
Oh
I
yeah.
watched DS9 for the 47th time with my co-host Dave, who's watching it for
47.
the first time. That was a lot of fun, and we'll be covering Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Prodigy, all the Trek coming out later this year after Picard season 3.
What's next
And,
after
yeah, that's,
DS9 then? Are you going to go into
uh,
like
I'm
Voyager or?
I'm not sure when we're gonna do another like legacy show. The
Yeah.
only legacy shows we've covered are the animated series and DS9, so we're kind of jumping around all over the place. We might do like a Enterprise. I think it'd be fun to do original series with someone watching it for the first time in
Yeah,
modern day.
very
I think
much.
it might be exciting, but yeah, I think we're gonna be looking into like doing some interviews in the near future. So hopefully we'll be
Ooh.
chatting with some of the people that work on Star Trek. So
Yes, it's always great to give a spotlight to those behind the camera because they bring this to life. So very
absolutely.
nice. But yeah, and I am Dom Parrish. You can find me here at Trek Central, where I sometimes do live streams, I sometimes write videos, and I sometimes do other stuff. That's just me. You can find me at Twitter at DomDParis, where I also sometimes do things. But yes, you've all been fantastic. I've had some lovely guests to co-hosts to join me on this, and it was a fantastic episode. So thank you all for being here, and as always, live long and prosper.
See you next time.